Okay, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Alana. I just graduated with my degree in environmental studies with a minor in sustainability. I wanted to research this topic in particular as I grew up on a farm raising dairy goats and horses, and I've worked on several mixed farms back in the States. I noticed that the Lake District is a unique and intriguing landscape where multiple concerns take form surrounding cultural preservation and environmental degradation. I wanted to see how these concerns are being navigated and potentially contribute to a vision for the future. Thank you for listening. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share some of what I learned. So I'll start with some background and then get into the prevailing views and potential ways forward. The Lake District National Park is a unique, beloved landscape rooted in its pastoral history, faced with the task of adapting to an increasingly uncertain future. As Fletcher and Gabe explained, emerging thought critically analyzes the state of the environment, noticing correlations between intensive farming and aspects of ecosystem health, such as species abundance. Meanwhile, as was described in Jane's presentation, shepherds who have inherited their lifestyle maintain an irreplaceable relationship with the land, establishing a hardworking culture, confronting instability and threats to livelihood. All perspectives play an important role in defining the future of the land, though farming has become a highly contested subject, as different interests passionately defend their stance. Through these debates, modes of thought such as those outlined in Wyatt's presentation are exposed, causing us to consider our behavior towards the natural world and common philosophy throughout history. Naturalists such as William Wordsworth and Beatrix Potter have impacted our perception of the environment and remain important figures to consider as we define the prevailing culture of the future. My research question considered examples of farming while encouraging biodiversity, questioning the future culture of Lake District shepherding and conservation. In order to find a balance amongst numerous presented solutions, shepherds and conservationists must be willing to compromise and establish a plan that addresses the downfalls of the current system while recognizing the importance of preserving livelihoods. It seems that polarization has led to the emergence of two prevailing viewpoints. One holds that the cultural heritage of the Lake District must be protected, as the UNESCO World Heritage Site designation requires the preservation of fell grazing. This stance envisions a landscape maintained by sheep, preserving or increasing flock numbers, defining the Lake District by imagery surrounding herdwick, fell gatherings, and dry stone walls occupying maintained rolling hills. The opposing view holds that the landscape has been, quote, sheep-wrecked, as stated by George Monbiot, noting declines in biodiversity, an increase in water pollution, and the loss of unique ecosystems. Sheep are viewed as a monoculture, overwhelming habitats with their presence, snatching saplings and compacting the soil. Both of these arguments reference scientific and historical facts and deserve validation. In James Rebank's A Shepherd's Life, the reader witnesses the inheritance of shepherding culture, with the author describing the certainty he felt from childhood that he wanted to work the land. Learning from his father and grandfather, always observing, Rebanks comes to participate in the generational land shift that leaves him a steward of his cherished farm. With this comes a unique vocabulary and culture that emphasizes hardiness, the importance of family bonds, and close observation of stock and land. Chris Hodgson, a local shepherd and steward of Rydal Farm, similarly expresses the need to preserve shepherding culture for future generations, proud of a lifestyle that requires strength, determination, and hard work. Friends of the Lake District are also passionate about preserving Cumbria's traditions, opposing modern propositions to alter the use of land, envisioning a landscape such as that described by Wordsworth. According to the Friends, the lake's designation as a UNESCO World Heritage Site depends on the pastoral land use system, characterized by enclosed fields and the rearing of native sheep. Furthermore, many argue that the landscape requires the presence of sheep, as bracken would overwhelm the hills without their regular grazing. Meanwhile, the rewilding movement refers to biodiversity surveys that indicate a sharp decline in environmental health. George Monbiot makes claims of cultural hegemony, stating that the entirety of the Lake District is subject to the demands of shepherds. Furthermore, critics emphasize the nonsensical state of subsidies, as the government pays farms to stay afloat, only to incentivize environmental schemes that remediate the damage inflicted by the farming that's being funded. Jamie Normington of the Cumbria Wildlife Trust stated that the transformation of the Lake District from closed canopy forest to open canopy occurred due to overgrazing, with sheep preventing saplings from maturing, compacting soil and increasing erosion. Gareth Browning disputes claims that Herdwick are native, emphasizing them as unnatural, having been brought to the lakes around 1000 AD. Furthermore, studies cited by Monbiot reveal that sheep dip has been found in 90% of Lake District rivers, threatening invertebrate populations. These impacts can be felt throughout ecosystems, as the delicacy of food webs causes ripple effects, ultimately targeting multiple species through the impact of a series of changes. Beatrix Potter is often held responsible for the idealization of shepherding culture, teaching the unquestioned benevolence of farming. Those expressing the opinions discussed care deeply about the land and are invested in the future of the Lake District, aiming to create an inheritable landscape. Throughout our time in the Lake District, a theme surrounding balance emerged. Without compromise, policy will continue to contradict itself, and valued elements of the landscape, environmental or cultural, will remain endangered. In order to restore the environmental and social health of the Lake District, farmers and conservationists must collaborate, recognizing common ground, considering the history of place. Regenerative farming envisions a system wherein farmers continue to utilize the productivity of the land while providing space for biodiversity to thrive. Lee Schofield and James Rebanks have successfully employed this approach, reversing the impacts of habitat degradation by reducing stress on the land and introducing different disturbance agents. Normington and Schofield both reference the presence of mixed farms as contributing to peak biodiversity in the mid-1800s, with a variety of livestock providing niches for species to occupy. An important shift occurred during World War II, when imports were disrupted and the demand for food dramatically increased. Farming became centered around maximizing profit and yield, meaning overgrazing was widespread, while the Green Revolution encouraged monocultures and mechanized agriculture. Post-war headage payments incentivized land degradation, with policies containing no criteria for sustainability. In English Pastoral, Rebanks describes the gradual degradation of his land upon employing modern farming strategies after witnessing the conversion of local farms to factory, large-scale operations. Rebanks stopped growing crops such as turnip and barley, sprayed pesticides to clear the pasture of thistles, switched to more efficient breeds of sheep, and applied artificial fertilizer to the land. Rebanks soon became disillusioned with industrial agriculture after witnessing the decline of curlews and other wildlife on the land, while noticing an impact on his family's well-being. The funds required to attain the machinery and chemicals create massive amounts of debt for farmers who are pressured to abandon traditional mixed farming methods. It becomes an unending battle to stay afloat, one that shepherds continue to face today, heavily dependent on government subsidies. Recognizing the inefficiency and inhumanity of industrial farming, Rebanks decided to regenerate his land, using muck as fertilizer, planting 25,000 saplings, rerouting the river to create wetland areas, and reducing the amount of space he allows grazing on to make room for biodiversity. Rearing Galloway cattle, Herdwick sheep, chickens, and horses, Rebanks maintains farming culture while fighting monoculture tendencies and providing habitat for species like otters that now occupy the ponds on property. Rebanks estimates that he has taken 15% of his farm out of active production, claiming, quote, "There must be some letting go. You can't drain it all and use it for farming or grazing. You have to set some aside," end quote. These efforts must be recognized and compensated, especially in a post-Brexit world of free trade deals, wherein farmers will not be able to compete without using intensive agriculture and destroying remaining biodiversity. Lee Schofield and Rebanks share the vision of mixed farms hosting biodiversity, maintaining a connection between locals and the land. In his book Wildfell, Schofield recalls the rewilding of Haweswater Reservoir and 2 hill farms, where he took 1,200 sheep off the land and reintroduced around 300. The work at Haweswater includes restoring watercourses, blocking artificial drains, and regenerating peat bogs and woodlands. Despite having faced severe backlash for his efforts, Schofield is not anti-farming. He believes that highly traditional farms can coexist with biodiverse ecosystems. This becomes evident upon visiting the RSPB site, wherein Galloway cattle seek shelter under oak trees and a re-wiggled river runs through a productive, biodiverse, oat-yielding hay meadow. Schofield describes how nature will exhibit resilience when allowed to, with juvenile salmon utilizing the re-wiggled river around 3 months after restoration. The hay meadows demonstrate how, as Schofield puts it, quote, nature conservation and sustainable farming can go hand in hand, end quote. They provide habitat and feeding ground for swallows while hosting wildflowers such as yellow rattle and eyebright. An act as accessible as making the hay bales smaller has brought environmental and social benefits, as plastic use is reduced, and the bales can be stored in stone barns that have existed on the landscape for centuries. Furthermore, the act of reaping oats brings the community together, nurturing and encouraging relationships with the land, soil, animals, and agricultural products. Despite the call for farming and nature coexisting, Schofield and Rebanks have both faced severe scrutiny, just as shepherds are subject to threats to livelihood from George Monbiot. Uncompromising stances cause stagnancy amongst discussions, threatening the valued elements of the Lake District regardless of affiliation. Economically, a balance between farming and nature may provide stability for farmers facing unfathomable uncertainty amidst policy change and Brexit impacts. Recent projections show governmental subsidies that mask the inefficiencies of farming disappearing by 2030, with upland farming income becoming dependent on agri-environmental schemes. Currently, policy is in need of reform, as the food system involves both exporting and importing sheep products, with little local customer-farmer exchange occurring. Environmental schemes provide funding for farms to reserve spaces for nature, compensating for space that wouldn't have been used for providing for the local community regardless. Ideally, encouraging education and interaction with the land and farming would lead to societal changes that involve food sovereignty and shifts in the way we value food. As James Rebanks puts it, quote, pay me to do my regenerative farming, or go to a shop and pay me twice as much for my steak, end quote. Until we experience a shift that decreases imports and exports and establishes a stable local economy, funding farmers so that they might increase biodiversity allows for improved well-being of farmers, animals, the land, and wider communities. Additionally, a decrease in interest in shepherding amongst younger generations calls for a new approach that merges environmental interest with traditional animal husbandry. A short film by Rob and Harriet Fraser features Richard Maxwell, a local farmer who used to be production-focused and converted to an organic farm. Maxwell introduced Galloway cattle to his land, saving costs on measures that would need to be taken when caring for a less hardy but more productive breed, only treating problems as they arise. Maxwell states, quote, the way for the future is how things were in the past, end quote, in reference to mixed farming, creating complexity within the landscape. Maxwell's quality of life improved as well, as he noted that intensive farming requires more labor inputs, instigating a fight with natural processes. Similarly, Chris Hodgson at Rydell Farms is adapting to a changing future, becoming excited about planting trees and introducing cattle to the landscape. Considering the unstable state of our future, whether it be referring to climate change, policy upheaval, or cultural shifts, collaboration and cooperation between interests that consider themselves at odds is of the utmost importance. Establishing compromises may help foster an environment wherein shepherds and conservationists are valued, perhaps with the two terms becoming interchangeable. Moving towards mixed farms that provide niches for biodiversity allows for farmers to maintain their livelihoods while improving the health of the land and addressing pressing crises such as water pollution, soil health degradation, and biodiversity loss. Cemented in the culture of the Lake District, Wordsworth adored nature, contributing to a mindset of environmental stewardship. In lines written in early spring, Wordsworth wrote, "To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man has made of man." Wordsworth encouraged readers to establish a bond with nature, to let nature be your teacher, acting according to natural processes. We're presented with an opportunity to build on this thought, creating a culture of cooperation wherein we agree that we want security, social and environmental health, and well-being. Striking a balance between shepherding and rewilding may fulfill these needs, allowing for land regeneration and sustaining livelihoods. Thank you for listening.